Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining GFI's quarterly Building Your Alt Protein Career webinar. I'm so glad you've joined us. My name is Asia Sheehab, and I'm an academic community specialist here at the Good Food Institute. And I will pass over the mic to our featured guest shortly. But for those of you who may be new to the GFI community, I wanted to share a quick introduction about who we are and what we do. If this is your first time with us, I would highly encourage you to spend some time after this call exploring the many free resources on our website, gfi.org, which includes everything from from technical reports and blogs to a free online course about alternative protein science, and also gives you some specific ways to get involved in one of our many alt protein communities. The purpose of this quarterly call is to share resources to support anyone who is interested or just exploring an alternative protein career path and learn directly from alternative protein professionals who are working in the field and industry. It's the perfect place to gather career insights from personal experiences and gain really actionable advice based on the specific steps that different folks in the community have taken to navigate the alternative protein space, the job market, and also how they've built a fulfilling and meaningful career. Here's a rundown of what we'll be doing today. So after I briefly introduce GFI and share a new career resource with you, I will introduce Philip Saneski, who's on the call today with us, to share about his culinary career journey and insights. And then we will open up the floor for questions from you all. You're welcome to submit questions in the designated Q&A chat throughout Phil's presentation, or feel free to save them to the end. All right, so GFI, or the Good Food Institute, is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. We are funded entirely by philanthropy, and our generous donors allow us to work towards this vision in three areas of focus. I am part of our science and technology team, where we work to advance foundational open access research in alternative proteins, and also work to create a thriving research, education, and training ecosystem. Our corporate engagement team partners with companies and investors around the globe to really drive investment and accelerate innovation and scale the supply chain. And finally, our policy team advocates for fair policy and public research funding for alternative proteins. I'm coming from the US team, but I have the privilege of working with a global team of experts with our affiliates in Brazil, Europe, Israel, India, the Asia Pacific region, and as of last year, Japan. And what motivates our work at GFI is the fact that our current system for producing meat, dairy, and eggs is extremely unsustainable and inefficient. This system exacerbates climate change, environmental degradation, antibiotic resistance, as well as global food insecurity and issues of animal welfare. And despite more and more people learning about these issues, we're not yet seeing enough individuals changing the way that they eat. Instead, per capita, we're actually seeing meat consumption continuing to rise globally. So instead of asking consumers to completely give up the foods that they know and love, we believe the solution actually lies in making products that are just as tasty and affordable as conventional meat, but without relying on such intensive resources. Here are a few different ways to produce alternative proteins. We can use plants, we can use fermentation or microbes, or we can cultivate it from animal cells. And if you want to learn more about each of these alternative protein pillars, I highly recommend going to gfi.org/science. And that's where you can take a much deeper dive into the science and current research being done in each of these different alternative protein pillars and get a better understanding of each one. And since I know you all are at least potentially interested in a career in the alternative protein industry, I wanted to highlight a brand new resource that my teammates over at GFI Asia Pacific launched. As you can tell from this super cute video, it is a really fun resource, so I highly recommend checking it out after this call. It's meant to be an interactive tool designed specifically for those looking to enter the industry but don't know exactly where they might fit into the value chain. And the tool has career maps and job archetypes for each of the alternative protein pillars, so plant-based, cultivated, and fermentation sectors. And it also provides you with upskilling and hands-on training opportunities to help you obtain jobs in the alt protein sector. These maps also showcase everything from supply chain sourcing and bioprocess optimization to strategic marketing and regulatory affairs, and just really illustrate the essential components driving the industry forward. And the focus of this tool, at least right now, is mostly on the product development stage of alternative proteins, but I do really recommend taking a look, even if you're looking kind of outside of just product development. It gives you a good understanding of what kind of jobs are existing in the field and where we're moving towards, where we see the needs. And you can find this resource at pathways.gfi.org. So as for today, we'll be taking a look at alternative proteins from a slightly different angle, which is why I'm sure many of you are registered for this webinar. And while of course science is key to making alternative proteins that have the right texture and mouthfeel, that are nutritious and cost competitive, it's also really important to recognize that alternative proteins are new to many consumers and to the world. And for this reason, chefs and those in the culinary arts have an essential part to play in this field by experimenting in the kitchen and paving new ways of preparing and serving alternative proteins. This is why I'm very excited to have our guest speaker today, Philip Saneski, to share about his culinary career path and talk about the pivotal role chefs can and are playing in driving innovation and sustainability in food. Our hope is that you'll walk away from this webinar with a better understanding of how those with a culinary arts degree or experience can use alternative proteins to help build a more equitable and sustainable food system. And with that, I'm going to introduce Philip. So Philip Saneski's culinary career started in Michelin Star and James Beard Award kitchens. He later joined the board of the Research Chefs Association, or RCA, which led him to be vice president of product and commander-in-chief for Regrained, an innovative upcycled food startup. From there, Phil led product development at CCD Innovation, a leading Bay Area-based CPG consultancy. After consulting, he was the culinary director of Farming Hope, a food security nonprofit. There, he led numerous culinary experiences that highlighted progressive California cuisine, anything from seven-course tasting menus to private events. And currently, Phil is an executive chef for the Good Eating Company. Phil has spoken about sustainable food systems and chef-driven menus at South by Southwest, New Products, Food Integrity Global, the CIA Global Plant Forward Summit, and RCA conferences, among others. His recipes have been featured in Bon Appetit, Travel and Leisure, and Culinology magazines. Finally, Phil graduated from Johnson & Wales with a Bachelor of Science in Food and Beverage Entrepreneurship. Reading that made me so excited to actually welcome Phil to the stage with me today. And yeah, I will hand the mic over to you to share about your amazing story.
Thank you, Asia, for the introduction. So, I wish the alt protein career resource was available when I started, getting into the field of food. But really, what I started was in fine dining kitchens and restaurants. That is still kind of my work ethic now. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a elevated, really hard working line cook. I wanted to have more of an impact on the world, and an impact on a sustainable future of food than the traditional back of the house kitchen, as a chef. And so I started researching around and I found a nonprofit, as Asia mentioned, the Research Chef Association. The mission of the Research Chef Association is to elevate food product development globally through culinary arts and the science of food. And then in doing that, I created a student committee, which is similar to IFTSA for those of you who are familiar. This was a new initiative. This was a way for me to connect with students to understand, what they wanted, and I can represent them to the Research Chef Association board and at conferences, which was really how I got connected to a lot of people, both who I could learn from and as well as people who I could continue learning with. And what I found in this gap analysis of what is happening in the overall food industry, what students want, and then what we can implement within the Research Chef Association as a nonprofit, was I created an upcycled foods product development student competition. And it was for culinary science, culinary food science. It later branched out to like MBA programs. It later branched out to like chemical engineering majors who were interested in doing like process engineering for other brands and having that type of job once they graduated. And so this competition, as it evolved, it really turned into an upcycle innovation platform. This was 2016. And this upcycle innovation platform really was a way to identify who the tastemakers were that can utilize culinary and food science principles to develop a fully commercialized packaged food product. Something really unique and something that like gave students a lot of experience that would directly translate into the professional world, as well as being connected directly to a lot of these brands where they were getting samples from, and then being able to present their product at the Research Chef Association conference, sort of like the GFI conference. It's our really, really big event every year. And then just really having the ability to facilitate those relationships. In creating the competition, this was very indirect of myself. I started to get to know a lot of startups. I got to know a lot of corporate strategics. Upcycling was a newer thing then, and big companies. The longer they were, the longer they've been around, the more of a waste byproduct they've been sitting on. The longer they've been thinking about what they can do to make waste turned into business. And so I got connected to a lot of people. I'm really, really thankful for that. I think this is just the power of of students as well too. And then in over time, we created an upcycled future market, which was sort of like a hypothetical market in the future of products that don't exist on the market, all from students, but also, what if this was in the market? What if like this was hypothetical? Then kind of taking it to the next level from there was students started to submit to pitch competitions. Students started to get publicity. They started to launch Kickstarter campaigns. When I was doing this gap analysis, I didn't initially think uh, about having students be the forefront of a lot of innovation. But as I was talking to companies, they're like, we prefer to have students because they are the freshest industry perspectives, and they're going to be the ones that are creating the future of food. And that was really inspiring for me. And it gave me a lot of confidence because I don't know if a lot of you can relate, but it was hard for me as a student to feel like I could go up to people at conferences and even have a conversation, or it took me like extra long to like write an email. So that a lot of those relationships ended up bringing me on to the RCA board of directors, and I still have really close mentors to this day who I can reach out to for really, really specific questions. But I think the overarching theme was I was just really curious, like a lot of you, like really curious about what is the future of food, and who are going to be the key stakeholders in that regard. And one thing also led to was starting a company. It's called Regrains, now called Upcycled Foods Inc. But Regrain was what we started with, and Regrained, we were lucky to co-develop a dehydration technology with the USDA here in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we could dry brewer spent grain from craft breweries who have to pay to dispose of their quote unquote waste in a responsible manner. And also being in San Francisco, there's like two bridges, so it's just really inefficient. So, we're really solving this problem as a service for breweries to turn their waste byproduct into a high protein, high impact prebiotic flour. So sort of two sides to the business. There's the ingredient standardization side. Those of you who are familiar with a lot of these startup companies, you probably have some of this experience, whether it's precision fermentation or tissue engineering or cultivating cells. And then my favorite part was in the CPG innovation side. So as you can see, the picture in the top left corner, we started with snack bars, three SKUs of snack bars that were distributed into 2,000 grocery stores around that, nationally here in the US. Later, we used the flour to make a line of snack puff chips, chef-driven flavors in particular, things like, how can you get Mexican street corn elote like into like a chip puff? Like, how can you get what was another flavor like aged Parmesan cheese, like not just like cheese puff, but like aged Parmesan with like umami and really like a lot of like mushroom powder and some of the grain powder as well too. The bottom left-hand corner there is the actual grain like itself as a flour. And then what was also really interesting for us and really impactful was as we grew, we became like an ingredient B2B company. So things like, the pizza crust, there's currently a like a non bread. There we've done tortillas. But yeah, for me, like I think, the opportunity to start a company with two other dudes from San Francisco was the best learning. It was end-to-end concept to commercialization. And I honestly just didn't know better about like how hard it would be, but like putting myself through the ringer, like it was utilizing my existing skill sets, not only like as a chef and as a chef presenter, but also learning to work cross-functionally with operations, with supply chain, with marketing, with sales. Of course, in being in a startup, we're a very small company, so we sort of cross collab with a lot of them, and a lot of us very small. But that was a really good way for me to work with other people that were a lot smarter than me and skill sets that I didn't have. And then, beyond Regrains, I was there end of 2016 to March 2020. March 2020, we were raising our Series A rounds. Of course, the whole world pretty much shut down, and literally almost overnight, all our investors pulled out. So we had to make a few hard pivots at Regrain. Cutting our salaries for a few months at a time was one of them. And then later on, August in 2020, I was able to get an opportunity to lead product development at a nearby CPG consultancy, some food service and QSR sprinkled in there. But really, I got an opportunity to focus on my favorite part of bringing a product to market, and that is product development innovation. This was also a really ripe time, as a lot of you are really well aware, for when this explosion in alternative proteins happened. So I got an opportunity to work with small and large companies, but more so small companies, and I thought it was more fun to work with them on new ways of extruding chicken nuggets, novel ways of making bacon without pork or in the traditional way. And I'll probably end it there because I don't think I can say too much more. But I was able to get my hands on a lot of novel products and learn a lot like as well too. And it was really cool for me to build relationships with a lot of these local brands because being in the San Francisco Bay Area, we're really close and in a lot of people's innovation backyard. And that kind of inspired me to join a food security nonprofit as the world was opening up again called Farming Hope, where I was culinary director. It's a social enterprise job training program with a huge event arm. So we trained recently incarcerated or single moms like re-entering the workforce or immigrants seeking like asylum from the country that they came from and being in San Francisco. Like we had like a 12-week training program that taught them how to cook. Started in a commercial kitchen. The last 6 weeks were at a Plant Forward Cafe in the heart of San Francisco's foodie Mission District called Manny's. And what my favorite part was the events arm. I am so into like just creating culinary experiences of all different kinds, especially the ones that explore like the future of food. And with that, I started to use a lot of these relationships I built in menus that I was developing for private events. So I can speak to using like UC Berkeley student graduates, Sundial Foods. I use their product in on a menu at Manny's. I used it in like a chicken and waffles dish. I was using upcycled companies, but it was really cool to showcase like what a future menu would look like, hopefully in 10 years and maybe less or 50 at the minimum. I was also one of the first to get my hands on some of these newer products, some of the cell-based products with being in the Bay Area, as well as like cacao-free chocolate. I think Meaty was like one of the first, we did like demos for them here. So that was really cool to feel like, as a chef and as an innovator, like I really want to be the first person to see a lot of these products firsthand and be able to understand what their functions are. And for those of you who have a culinary background, that is really valuable. Like it is increasingly in more demand of understanding, how to make food taste good at an initial scale. What are those applications? And then working with a lot of food scientists or technical scientists on really what does the scale up look like without compromise, so that we can have an impact on making really, really good food for the masses that, is creating a just more sustainable food system. So I guess I'm kind of getting into, the future food dinners. I'll talk really briefly. The one on the far left, if anyone is familiar, is Chunk Foods filet mignon. There's a crispy tapioca cracker, a carrot top chimichurri, and a pickled mandolin turnip on there. So that was actually a GFI event that I did with Marika. I don't know if she's on the call, but was really thankful to do a GFI event during the GFI conference 2023. The theme was what if you could walk into a restaurant and there was a secret menu that thanks, Bianca. What if there's a secret menu that increased check averages for chefs, and it was plant-based, something that was really cool that brought a lot of traffic to their venues, and really like understood how to have some value there. In the top right corner, I did a private event for the Young Presidents Organization. You can see Nature's Finds. There's Plantable that had a bacon there. There was a upcycled jackfruit. This was 2021, so Follow Your Heart was one of the more standardized like eggs, both in powder and liquid form, like on the market. But yeah, really really cool way to explore that. And then one of my favorite examples. This was also during the GFI event that I worked on with Marika was Plantable's eggless egg. I think there's such a big opportunity, especially with, what's going on now with the egg market and how, chefs and food service operators can future-proof their future supply chains and lock in those contracts long term. But yeah, we did a mini chocolate souffle, and there's what I call a really really mini version of a vegan lemon meringue pie with Plantable's meringue. So it's kind of showcasing applications there. And we intentionally wanted to make it small because I think there was like 15 little bites. And this was presented to R&D chefs, to corporate food service chefs like myself now. And this was presented to culinary directors. This was presented to a lot of people who have a lot of stakeholding buying power in the industry. So that was really, like one of the things that excites me is, exploring what the future of food looks like from a chef lens. It was, these types of future food dinners and events, it's an innovation opportunity, like I mentioned, to discover the novel products and to meet these food tuck founders that, their passion just totally rubs off on me. And then beyond that, it's really fun for me to cook with my chef and food science friends, and then they get connected, post events, which is like a really good way to kind of bridge the gap. Sometimes, I guess in the past, there's sort of been like chefs and there's been like food scientists, but now I think that like to be a really good food scientist, you having chef and culinary applications in some format as a background experience certainly helps with food science prowess. And having food science and understanding the why, the life goals here is getting chefs involved with food science principles so they can understand the whys, the hows, and the what ifs. I think that really ties into, just how a passion of mine turned into a career and continuous community building. Um, when I was cooking in a restaurant and grinding and working like Saturday, Sunday nights, like super late, I had no idea that regrain like would exist. I had no idea what a research chef was. Honestly, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So during a lot of this time, even when I was involved in the Research Chef Association. But I was, not afraid to learn by doing. I was a little scared during most of it probably, but it ended up being a way that I could create the opportunity that I wanted, and that was an entrepreneurial one. That was one that like enabled me to have conversations with other companies like vice presidents of products and their chief innovation officer, even though I was, at a much smaller company. I really credit the RCA for being able to help me find important mentors and learn the leadership skills that I just didn't have. Both the leadership skills and the mentors, like because I was in the traditional back of the house kitchen. Some other things that I've done, in the past couple of years, like I'm the founding Food Hack San Francisco founding member. If any of you on this call are involved too, I'd love to connect in terms of Food Hack and the global community that represents how to democratize investing in a better climate future specifically. Events, I mean, the events are just a really key way that I build meaningful relationships. I think passionate people end up finding other passionate people at events. I'm really lucky to be in the San Francisco Bay Area where there's not only a lot of events, but there's like a plethora and a cornucopia of really passionate people. And yeah, that's something that I just continue to follow up on this day. And what's even cooler is like I can learn from other people in the way that they can learn from me about like, hey, what is like a corporate executive chef at the good eating company's job like? What is like your job like opening up, a plant-based restaurant? What does your job look like as a startup working in this as a founder of a food tech startup? And then, kind of one step further, like what does it look like for people that are or students that are pursuing their PhDs, like that have been able to take advantage of opportunities to work with VCs and venture funds, the due diligence on companies as they're continuing to raise money. I think that's a really good way for a lot of students who are looking for internships or part-time summer jobs, or in the way that there's like MBA interns. There's I've seen a lot of examples and actually a few from the UC Davis Alt Protein Project who have done diligence for some VC firms, at least here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So really cool opportunities. Since I talk a lot about food, I just wanted to present like a few pictures. Look at the food. I think everything here except the lobster in the left, bottom left is all plant forward. Some have some dairy and whatnot. But if anyone has any questions about these dishes, like I'm happy to talk about it in more detail, but I won't go through each one because I won't bore your ear off in that regard. But taking pictures is always cool. But also thank you for joining today. I really appreciate your time for hearing my story. I'm Philip Saneski. My friends call me Phil. You can call me Phil. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty good. LinkedIn is like my Facebook. It's the news feed I give a shit about, and yeah, I just wanted to really more so get through my presentation in a high level capacity and just have some dialogue and some questions and hear from all of you.
Amazing. If we could have a round of applause right now, I think we would be hearing it because that was a wonderful presentation packed with so many stories, and it's so amazing to see just the way that you kind of crafted your career. I know we've talked before about how, sometimes things make sense when you look back on your career, and as you're
Definitely.
going through it, you're kind of following passion and following mentors and following opportunities. As you said, with, yeah, you never really thought of yourself of launching a business or company, but there you were in 2020. So it's really cool to see, yeah, the kind of guiding principles throughout your career. Sounds a lot like a lot of passion and networking as well. Um,
Thank you, AJ.
yeah. So I do want to open it up to the audience. Feel free to add any questions that you have about Phil's career, any insights you want to gather from him into the Q&A chat. I do see one question that I think the way that I'm kind of interpreting it is maybe how could somebody who maybe doesn't have, an established culinary arts degree or much experience quite yet, how would they go about kind of getting into this field and creating, yeah, the things that you are now creating at those future food dinners? Kind of like if you were to think back to when you were just starting, where would you start?
Yeah, I think, kind of continuing on the events piece, like volunteering to help chefs with different events is always really helpful. Events you get kind of more one-on-one time with the chef team, and a lot of times the menu it's more specific for certain events, whether that's like the Good Food Institute or the Research Chef Association or like a food festival or perhaps there's like a plant-based chef that is working like outside lands, a music festival, something that's pretty fun too. So I actually continue to still do this, not only with like chef friends but chef friends of friends, as a way to just kind of continue learning about new things. The thing with food is there's so much, it's always evolving, and I love that. So I'm always learning, and I'm always learning and utilizing like the existing networks and communities here in the San Francisco Bay Area on how to just kind of teach myself new techniques. So I think volunteering for the events is nice. It's a good way. And then also, if those who don't have experience and want to get experience, events are a little easier to get into, as opposed to like working in a professional kitchen. Sometimes it can be a little harder, but that could be like the next step. So starting off with, more a la carte things and then moving into perhaps like more professional kitchens would be good. Yeah. And then like kind of to me, there's really two types of kitchens. Um, there's bakeries and restaurants. Restaurants, depending on the volume, they can be a lot like initially to kind of consume. And bakeries, for example, for those that are really interested in pastry, I have a huge pastry background, and but bakeries a little easier sometimes because you don't have to bring like a knife kit. A lot of the work is with your hands. There's a lot of extra work to do during bakeries. So there's one that's a little more approachable and one that like is restaurants, fine dining in particular could be a really good avenue if for those of you who are ready for that.
Definitely. I love that. I do have or I have a few questions of my own, but I do want to open it up to the audience. So I do see a question from Hugh in terms of legal aspects, which I'm not sure if you're able to speak to that too much, but I guess just in terms of yeah, cultivated meat or some of the products that are available right now for like high-end restaurants or being a chef, being able to kind of work with some of these very new
Mhm.
that might not be available to the public. Would you mind kind of like speaking about how you were able to kind of get those opportunities to then work with those companies or get like those small sample sizes?
Right, yeah. So some of the ways that I work with the cultivated and cell-based companies, like in particular, were for these companies directly. And it was like a private tasting, or they wanted to showcase like their ingredient as a hero ingredient, like for courses. So a lot of that was just some of these companies maybe couldn't hire like a chef, full time, but like in a contract consulting capacity also having like a venue at Farming Hope was how we were. just through the grapevine being able to be connected with other food scientists and whatnot. They said, hey, like, maybe reach out to Phil at Farming Hope. He does different types of activities, and he could be able to showcase it. From a regulatory perspective, it was a private event, and of course there was waivers signed, like, but yeah, before that, and yeah, I've been able to try a few products just from visiting um other cell-based products, beyond meat, like, as well too. So yeah, so pretty cool. I'm like I said, I'm really lucky to be in the San Francisco Bay Area where a lot of the innovation happens. But also, yeah, a lot of it is just kind of connections, and going to conferences like Future Food Tech, for example, that happens this week. Something that I regularly involved with.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like networking, like just being kind of known as the chef or the person who's willing to do these types of events or working with these types of products. It sounds like you've really been able to maybe through, yeah, just networking or volunteering or kind of stepping up, become known as one of those people who would be willing to do that. Um, just kind of on that note of networking. Because I feel like so much of your career has come from connections you've made, or even like co-founders for launching a company. It's a lot of relationship building, and I'm curious if you have any like advice in terms of how to go about networking, because I know it can sometimes feel transactional for some folks.
Yeah,
They feel
yeah.
like, I'm being performative or I'm being fake, but it sounds like you've been able to make really genuine connections that have been fruitful for you and for them as well.
Right,
I'm curious,
right.
yeah, just any advice about networking.
Yeah, really, really good one. I'm working on it. I think for me, I just am just highly curious about learning from people. I was really lucky to have a content platform early. And that was the RCA Upcycle Foods competition. And that was like something that was important to students, to universities. The students became professionals, in the field. So that was like, easy community building, or we can learn from each other. The startup founders, had like value in there. The big companies like had value in utilizing students for like R&D resources, and startups would understand how to use their ingredient and application. So like that was four, right there, for four different groups of ones I stayed connected with. I really can't recommend enough, being involved in something like the GFI, or Research Chef Association, or the Upcycled Food Association, something I was really involved with in the founding of that. Like, Food Hack is a really good one. So, thinking of like what's your content platform, and that is like a way that I'm always looking for a good reason to reach out to people, I guess, is what I'm saying. And having a good reason, it enables you to be able to begin a relationship, and then to nurture it as much or as little as you want, like, in the future. I don't want to make that sound like it's like I'm like talking to someone and seeing what kind of value they are, to me. But it was how I was able to start a conversation, and then there was a lot more genuine, authentic, community building, like, from there. So, like, for example, like, last, or 2 years ago rather, during Future Food Tech and Farming Hope, our first food hack San Francisco event, we had 15 different companies set up like a mini booth at our Farming Hope space, and there was like 175 people there present. So anyone from chefs to food scientists to investors, and climate tech like folk as well too. The premise behind that was like, well, maybe these startup companies, we don't want them to pay for a really expensive booth at Future Food Tech, but we still want the innovation to be here, and we want them to be connected. So I think being able to connect other people is a really good way for building relationships, because people can remember that, like, as well too. So Food Hack was it is and continues to be pretty cool in that regard.
Those are both really good pieces of advice. Just to kind of emphasize your first point on, yeah, kind of having something that you're, let's say you're going to somebody and asking for a meeting or just to chat, having something tangible that you're maybe working on helps to kind of showcase your passion. And I feel like people are always willing to help people who are curious or passionate. And if you have something that you're working on and you're specifically asking that person for their expertise or for their background on this application, it kind of makes that ask really clear and authentic. So
Right.
I love that you're
And if you have food to give someone when you meet them, you're so much more memorable. So just saying, So yeah,
true. Food or pictures of the food that you made.
definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I
Yeah, I see a few coming in. Are there any recipe books out there for alternative proteins that are comprehensive and modern? Um, there isn't like one like specifically for ones for like specifically alternative proteins in terms of like, how to reverse engineer like a Beyond or Impossible Burger, for example. But two of my favorite books. I guess because I just use traditional like books and then try to replace it with soy protein or fava beans or something like that. But there's two books that I think really stick out to me, and one is Dirt Candy. So Dirt Candy my favorite restaurant in the world, and it's fully vegetable based. And they'll do things like Nashville hot beet. They'll do like um, different like really innovative things with mushrooms. So that's a really cool book in terms of like innovation that like has protein incorporated into it. And then another book is called On Vegetables by Jeremy Fox. He was really one of my favorite chefs for a 3 Michelin star restaurant called Manresa, and actually the first like vegan Michelin star restaurant here in the Bay Area in Napa. So it's kind of like leading the charge there. He's the chef in Santa Monica in LA. For those of you who are familiar, Birdie G's and Rustic Canyon. So those are like the two like books that I use sort of as like inspirations for doing other different formulations, and that can transfer over like to alternative proteins like specifically. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Thanks for asking, India.
I like that.
Wow.
I like that answer because I think it just, yeah, emphasizes the need to be innovative and creative, and really you're creating something that doesn't yet exist. You're reinventing
Right,
the wheel. So you're taking inspiration from what you know has worked or consumers
right.
have loved or people are finding tasty, and then applying that traditional knowledge to a new space with new applications.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a little bit of like a working backwards approach, but it's nice to have like like a starting point that you have to sort of I have fun in like the reverse formulating like of it. So which is pretty typical of product development. Those of you who have experienced like probably are familiar with like match testing existing products on the market. So yeah. Are there any volunteering or competitions you recommend for students in Canada? The University of Guelph, if we have any representatives from there, they have awesome like food and food science programs. I think they have some funding from the Canadian government around alternative proteins. So I think if you're close to that ecosystem, would really recommend. But also getting involved with like restaurants in more major metropolitan areas like Toronto or Quebec, or Vancouver, if it's closer to like the West Coast. Vancouver can kind of pretty close to Seattle like as well. So a lot of there's a lot of alternative protein and just overall product development companies like in Seattle, like there's like Rebellious, for example. They're doing a lot of really cool work providing like meatless chicken to school systems specifically. So those are the ones like off the top of my head. And I believe there might be a Food Hack Toronto like as well. So but if there isn't, that's create the opportunity you want and be able to start the chapter, and that gives you your content platform to be able to contact whomever you want. Because I think there's what's the fish, it's not new fish, New School Foods, the fish company or alt fish company in I want to say they're Toronto. So yeah, maybe follow up with Chris on that. So yeah.
Really good advice there. Creating the opportunity that you want, or creating, or when you see something lacking, that could be an
Yeah, that's your gap analysis. Like exactly. If there's something lacking that then it's ripe for opportunity and innovation.
definitely. And Hugh, I don't know if you are a student right now, but if you're even just like generally interested in, yeah, volunteering your time to learn more about alternative proteins or build the ecosystem, we also at GFI have the Alt Protein Project, which
Yep.
is a bunch of students around the world. We have over 70 active chapters with many of them in Canada right now, and they're really passionate about building more research, education, and I'm sure they'd be very interested in leaning more deeply into culinary arts as well. But yeah, they're a great virtual community to get plugged into, and I'm happy to share the link to that in the chat if you're not already familiar with the Alt Protein Project.
Nice. I've spoken with a few passionate alt protein project students locally and then at the GFI conference, here as well from Europe.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
one of our alumni is at New School Foods. I
Oh,
always mess
cool.
up their name, but yeah. So lots of
Cool.
Alt Team Project alumni out in the world too to connect with and network with. Awesome.
Cool. I think I see another question in the chat. What products like to see on the market that isn't currently available or that's available but needs a lot of improvement in taste and texture? The short answer is most all products, with taste and texture. Texture is the biggest thing. Taste can always be corrected. Like you can always throw like Cajun spices and call it like andouille sausage. You can, lean into like the globally inspired like flavors to figure out how to make it like familiar for consumers. Texture is just like really the hardest thing. Some of the better, not that I'm favoring anyone, but I will, and I will say it. But I think the Chung Foods filet mignon is awesome. I could totally see that being served in a food service application or like in a restaurant format. I think the redefined flank steak is also really good. I've planned to actually cook with it during SF Climate Week, which is really exciting. Um, I think milks and all dairy is certainly a really good case study on what success looks like in all protein. But what I've always been curious about is w- doing a plant-based paneer or a plant-based halloumi. Um, and if casein is the hard thing to mimic for the protein and the stretchability of something like mozzarella, why not do something that doesn't have casein in it, like and something that can like sear. So like halloumi, paneer, these could be formulated and you don't have a lot of barriers, to being able to make like the traditional counterpart. And something like, you know, paneer, it could be served in a lot of Indian restaurants and a lot of that target audience like is vegetarian or vegan anyway, so that could be like a really really good solution. Halloumi, similar, and halloumi is something that you could really have fun with in terms of like making like plant-based wraps and stuff like that. So I think there's a ripe innovation opportunity for that. I'm not going to start this company, but I would love to try products from someone who would be able to make that. So yeah.
All right, you hear that, everyone? That's your next opportunity, another gap analysis.
I forgot this was recorded, but you can send it to so yeah.
I mean, I think that there's so many products that are, a demonstration of what really is working, and then also like areas where we really need products. And paneer, I 100% agree, is something that, yeah, haven't seen on the market yet, but is so delicious and tasty, and I'm
Right.
sure we could work on that. I love it. Unless anyone else has any other questions, I'm happy to let you go a little bit early. I know life has been busy, but I really appreciate everything that you've been able to share with us in this short amount of time. I feel like we were able to cover a lot of content and gain a lot of insights. Is there anything that just to kind of close this out, is there anything that if you were to give one piece of advice in retrospect of your career thus far that you would want to share with somebody who's looking to, yeah, utilize more alternative proteins in their career, or yeah, how they can help build the future of food as you are by using the skills that they already do have. Is there any advice that you'd share that you haven't already shared? You've shared so much already, but anything that comes to mind?
Just think of like like traditional dishes that people already eat, and having one degree of innovation towards that, so that like they would find something more approachable. I'll give a couple examples. I'm doing a future food dinner of sorts during San Francisco Climate Week, and can kind of quickly walk you through parts of the menu. But the main course is a chicken fried steak with a flank steak from Redefined Meat. So it's exactly how a chicken fried steak is made with a little bit of a I'm actually going to use a vegan buttermilk brine. It's fried, panko, just egg. There's going to be like a vegan bacon chive biscuit. There's going to be like a gravy that has like some plant-based components to it as well too, but something pretty classic that people already eat. Um, but also has like a little bit of like an elevated feel to it. It's not something really emotional like a burger that people feel really strongly what it should or shouldn't taste like. Um, I think we're doing like a play on like a Panda Express like takeout box where we're doing like the Tyndall stuffed chicken wing, which is super cool. Like to have a stuffed chicken wing where you don't have to actually use real chicken. And like there's a bao bun with plant-based pork and a dumpling with plant-based pork and chive like as well. So I think understanding like what consumers are already eating and then having a plant-based version of that. And of course there's a lot of sort of macro trends around taste, health, convenience, affordability, um, and how can we move up like environmental impact and sustainability to be like one of those four pillars that when people are thinking about their better climate friendly food choices, that like there's five things that they think about. And I think that for me, like being able to come up with something familiar and being able to like sort of surprise people that the plant-based version of something that they're already eating is better can slowly change comforting food choices.
I love that. Thank you so much for that last piece of wisdom.
You.
Completely agree. And that sounds delicious. My mouth is now watering, if it wasn't already before, when I was looking at the pictures of all the food you've created. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. I really, really appreciate you joining us today. I think, yeah, you are the first person with a culinary arts background to be part of this series. So you really set a high standard, and we learned so much from you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and yeah, hit me up.
Of course. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Catch you on the next one.